Hi everyone, I'm really excited to share this throwback interview with Sato Ikeda. He has such an amazing backstory on his journey to becoming a PA, and I'm so thankful to have him here today to interview him and get his story because, guys, believe me, this is just such an empowering, inspiring story, and we have some great questions I'm going to get to ask him. So thank you so much for...
No, thank you for having me. I love what you do. You're amazing. You're an inspiration to all of us. I mean, I came to your conference 2-3 years ago, and I learned a whole lot. And I don't think I'd be able to keep on going had I not learned all the information that you taught me.
Thanks, man. That just means so much to me. And I know you and I spoke prior to this, and you have such an amazing story that I want to just share so much with everyone, but we'll kind of get to like the really pertinent aspects. But we got to start at the beginning. What kind of spiked your interest into becoming a PA?
So honestly, I didn't know anything about PAs while I was in undergrad. I think for the most of us, I was an undergrad almost 10 plus years ago, and we had the choices of med school, PT, dentistry, vet, and that's kind of what everyone knew to be quote unquote pre-med. We didn't know about MPs, we didn't know about PAs. So it wasn't until after I graduated when one of my friends was actually like, I'm going to become a PA. And he ended up going to, I think, Alderson Broaddus in West Virginia. And he was like, you should look into it. And that was the first time I was exposed to PAs. And from there, I just started doing my research.
Right. So it's unique. So many people do have a very similar story. And I myself personally, when I was an undergrad, I kind of knew about PAs slightly. But once I started researching, I realized there wasn't very many resources back then. And you really had to kind of network and find PAs and figure it out. But it's funny because now I have people that are in high school reaching out to say, I want to become a PA when I grow up. And I'm just like, that blows my mind. Because I was in the same boat where pre-med pretty much meant like dentistry, med school, veterinary school, like those type of things. Right. And you usually come across a PA, and that's what kind of spiked my interest. Right. That's how it was for me. So you kind of learn about the PA profession, and was it right away you kind of decided I'm going full force, or did you kind of shadow people, or how did you kind of...
I still had to figure out what it was, so I had to do my research. I probably spent a year doing research trying to figure out, is this really a right fit for me? Is this really what I want to do? Because once you get your foot in the door, you're doing it for the next 40 years of your life. If you start when you're in your 20s, you're going to be doing it to your 60s and 70s. So I had to make sure it was, yes, this is exactly what I want to do. This is what my dream is going to be, and I need to work towards that dream.
And so how did you network to learn more about it? Did you shadow a lot of PAs, or did you just work in various medical fields? How did you learn about it?
I think I just got lucky. I had PA friends that helped me, people that went through the process already who I could ask questions, get feedback from. I worked in the ER as a scribe. That helped a lot because there was always PAs in the ER with us. And then from there, I just kept, asking more and more questions. I followed forums. I attended your conference. And from there, it was just doing a little more research here and there.
Let's talk a little bit more about being a scribe in the ER, because this is probably one of the most common questions I get. People say, is scribing great to help you get into PA school, the experience, the knowledge you learn from it? And so I personally think scribing is amazing. You get to learn so much. Maybe talk a little bit about your experience scribing, some of the things that are interesting you got to learn as a scribe.
Definitely, I think there's two types of scribes out there. There's the ones that get to shadow providers and see what they see, hear what they hear, and get more of a well-rounded experience. And we have scribes that sit in a dictation room, listen to the audio, and just type. And I feel like the ones that get to see more are probably, it benefits them a whole lot more than the ones that just listen to a dictation and type away.
Right. Granted, if it's more of an active involvement where you're in the room while they're interviewing, did you feel that it gave you a good foundation towards PA school, like learning about diagnostic imaging, or would they take you under their wing, and kind of say, oh, this is why I'm ordering this test, or this is why I'm doing this?
Definitely. I had worked with a lot of physicians, essentially. For my first job, definitely a lot of physicians didn't really work with the PAs then, but they definitely taught a lot. They explained like the laboratory results, explained the imaging results. It's definitely more of you get to see what they do, the physical exam aspect. You get to see what they ask. So now you get asked questions like, oh, well, why'd you ask that for this patient, and why didn't you ask that for the other one? And then there was a lot of the diagnostic portion that helped, and that definitely helps you now. It's a lot easier now than it probably would have been had I not had that experience.
Yeah, it gave you familiarity
Right.
to the certain tests and diagnostic imaging and things. So that's amazing. Now, I think another thing people don't realize is we kind of get hounded on, you should shadow PA, but did you feel your experience of seeing how the whole realm of medicine, how everyone kind of works together as a team, did you feel that helped you kind of get a better basis of, PA is definitely what I want to do?
Absolutely, because I saw PAs work, I saw doctors work, I saw MPs work, and everyone has their subtle nuances. Everyone's a little different. So definitely seeing a PA work versus a doctor work versus an MP, it was definitely, and then being able to ask them questions. It's also important to ask the other fields, their perspective and how they feel about their career to make sure that, yes, I want to be a PA versus I want to be a doctor and MP. And that's a question that you're going to have to answer in most interviews.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's good to be well-rounded and learn about the different professions, because I've actually had people that told me, hey, I'm 100% going towards PA, and then they go on a mission trip or they interact with a couple physicians, and the next thing they know, he said, you know what? I'm glad I did that because now I want to pursue the MD route. And I think that's amazing because there's so much time and effort involved into going towards your career path. And this is going to be like your lifelong career. You want to make sure you're not going to have any regrets or second guesses or anything that makes you not enjoy what you're doing, because once you enjoy what you're doing work-wise, it's like they say, it's not work. You're just enjoying it, and each day is easy to go to. So you get to get all this experience doing the ER scribe. How many years did you work as an ER scribe?
I did 3 years in the Valley in West Hills. I did another 3 more years in Inglewood. And then, so I did 6 years total of scribing, 6 years of MA, and then an additional year of ER tech.
Okay, so you had a lot of pretty solid foundational experiences, medical experiences. And so you've been researching PA, you got a good hold, you know it's what you want to do, and now it's time to apply. And so kind of walk me through, because I know you had multiple years and cycles that you applied it. I want to kind of get through maybe the beginning, and then we'll learn how you improved upon it.
Definitely. I think the first year I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, we didn't really have forums back then. I think this was 2012. So I don't think I really knew about the Student Doctor Network forum or the other PA forums that we have. So I kind of just cast a wide blank. I started applying to schools that I honestly didn't know where they were. Okay. I just kind of went out there, tried to find as many schools as I could that had the GPA requirement that that I had. So I had a low GPA, so I had to find schools that only had a 2.8 requirement or something like that. And then so I applied 22 programs, I believe, across the nation.
So did you get any interviews that first time?
Nope.
So applied 22 programs, no interviews. And so that's got to be disheartening. But you've picked yourself back up.
It was disheartening, but it was more of I kind of expected it. Because the first time I'd heard from other people that, a lot of people are second-time applicants that get in, or third-time applicants. So I was like, okay, the first time, that's not so bad. I can just, pick myself up again, and then let's try it again next year, and I knew that my GPA wasn't the greatest. I wasn't a competitive applicant on paper. So I knew that, okay, well, I just need to pick up my GPA a little bit. So I started taking some classes.
Okay, so did you focus on retaking a lot of the courses, or did you do a post-bac program?
So financially, I couldn't do a post-bac because I lived up here by myself. So I had to work and take classes at the same time. So I kind of generated my own quote-unquote post-bac program where I decided I'll retake some of the classes that I didn't do well in, but at the same time, I'm going to take classes that enhance my learning. And I think that's a key because, I take a chemistry class, I'm not going to use chemistry ever again in PA school, But if I take a pharmacology class, that's helping me along the line now, and my life is a lot easier now in pharm because I took those classes.
Right, and I agree. Some people just take the classes just because it, quote-unquote, looks good on their application, like, oh, I took this molecular biology, that's going to look good, or this other class. But it's expensive, it's time-consuming, you're putting a lot of energy into it. It's better for you to kind of make sure that you're picking classes that are going to help you in the long run. Right. So things like medical terminology, pharmacology, genetics sometimes. Some of those things are all going to kind of help build a foundation that makes it easier when you're in PA school.
Definitely.
So then you go and it's time to apply for another cycle. Aside from improving your GPA, was there anything else you tried to focus on improving?
I did more hours. I added some volunteer hours here and there whenever I could. Living in LA, trying to afford rent and trying to squeeze in volunteer hours isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. So I added a couple little hours here and there. I talked to more PAs. I definitely used online resources a lot more. And then, I just took another shot at it. Didn't really improve that much. I want to say my first 3 years were that impressive in terms of like a drastic difference between the first and the third year.
Yeah, another thing that's difficult for most people is that, okay, I'll just take some more courses, do better, and my GPA is going to skyrocket.
Right.
But that's not the case. You have to think of all the units you have for your undergrad and over time, and taking a 3-unit course, even though you could ace it, it's not going to bounce it that high.
Right.
Did you find that was a little difficult?
Oh, definitely. Over the course of 6 years, I probably took about 140 units, I think.
Wow.
And my GPA went up by 0.5. So
yeah, it's just crazy how it is. And then another thing is you have your GPA and you think, okay, this is what it's going to be, and then you go into CASPA, then they have their own way.
They have their own magical way of calculating it. It's significantly lower than what you expected it to be.
And there's magical is a good way to say it. It's like no one knows how they're calculating it except for them. It's like people try to mimic it and they'll come up with something, but for some reason you put it in and it spits out a number that you're like, how did you get this?
Right.
But did you feel that CASPA was a daunting task in itself, just filling out the whole CASPA?
It's so much easier. I'm sure you did the same thing when the CASPA, was it online for you too?
Yeah, I was like just starting out, which makes me feel old, but...
Remember how you had to go through each time and you had to fill it out and things didn't transfer over the second year. So my first 3 years were like that, where things didn't transfer over. So every single time you had to re-put all your information.
I hated putting in the transcripts. I don't know if it's still exactly the same. I think it is. We have to do each individual, but I hated that you put each individual, and then if something didn't match, you basically screwed yourself.
Yep.
So CASPA is not difficult. It's just time consuming.
It's time consuming, right? And you have to take that into consideration when you're applying, because you want to get your stuff in as fast as you can, but it's going to literally take you a week at least to be able to put everything in.
Yeah. Some people say, "Oh, I'll sign up and then do it over the weekend, and I'll be set." Granted, physically you probably could do that, but you want to make sure you're not making any mistakes. You want to make sure everything is polished and as perfect as possible. So you want to put in the time and effort initially. I usually recommend if you could carve out like 20-30 minutes each day and just work on it a little bit. Next thing you know, you're done, and it wasn't that big of a task.
Right. I definitely try to get people to start early, start with their personal statements early, maybe start in January. So you give yourself 3 months, because realistically, your idea is to start in January. When do you actually really start? February, March, right? So then at least it gives you another month or two. And I say, hey guys, just try to get it in before June 1st. That's pretty much, that was my cutoff every single year, was June 1st, between June 1st and June 15th would be my cutoff to get everything in, because that way I knew I was going to be in the first batch of applicants that,
that's a good way to think about your timeline, to kind of start the new year, start fresh, you have that motivation, and you're set by the time it's midsummer when most people are applying. You're just kind of taking it easy because you've done all your work. Let's talk about the personal statement a little bit, because you applied multiple times. So each time, did you make a whole new personal statement? Did you tweak things? How did you go about that?
So the first couple, yes, I definitely revamped everything. Towards year 4, 5, and 6, there's not really much to change anymore. I mean, it's the same story. It's I didn't put myself forward in UCLA. I didn't do very well. I've done this, and this to improve, and this is how I've improved. This is how I've shown that, yes, I can handle the coursework, that my GPA as an undergrad, as an 18-year-old, does not accurately reflect a person that's almost 30.
Right. So. I agree. A lot of it is kind of showing your progression and how you improved upon yourself. Right. So some people get discouraged and they say, I didn't get in the first time, I'm going to apply again, but I don't know how I can improve myself. And one, if that's your mindset, then you're doing everything wrong, because you can always improve upon yourself, at least in some form and aspect. So showing how you... basically showing what you did in the past and how you improved upon it, that's what a lot of the programs want to see. They want to see some progression, some growth, some strength, the fact that you overcame obstacles. Those are all the key components that the programs want to see when you're a reapplicant. So let's kind of fast forward to what year did you have the most interviews?
Well, by the most, I'd say this past year I had 3 interviews out of 7 schools, I believe.
Okay. So in the beginning, you casted a wide net. You kind of applied to every program you felt you had all the requirements. And then you kind of tailored it down to more specific programs as you went along?
So what I did was, first year I just casted a wide net. Second year I still think I did a pretty wide net. I think it was 16 or something like that. And then I started whittling it down. And by year 6, it was 5 and 6. I think it was only 5 or 6 schools, 6, 7 schools, somewhere around there, where I picked schools that I actually wanted to attend. instead of picking a random school here and there. I was like, you know what, my family's in Southern California, I'm going to try to root myself in Southern California. And then I picked a couple outliers, like reach schools where I was like, okay, if I got in here, it would be nice.
Yeah. And I think you probably realized that once you whittled it down to kind of the 5 or 6 that you really wanted to go to, you probably, one, made sure you're focusing all your energy on the things they found important to really kind of make yourself a top applicant. And then you got to research that school more specifically, and that helps you for things like the interview because you actually have a good basis of their mission statement, or maybe you went on some tours. Did you go on any open houses or tours? Or?
I did open houses in pretty much all the Southern California schools, Western, USC, Marshall B. Ketchum had a conference. I went there for that too. And definitely. But I think the most important thing is answering those supplemental questions appropriately. You have to do your research at the programs. You can't just send them a generic answer that fits all the programs, because all the programs want underserved population, primary care, but each and every school has their own niche where they have something that they're proud of that they do that is different from everyone else, and you really have to target that, because they can tell right away from reading your applications that, this person doesn't know anything about the program.
Yeah, some people get themselves into some trouble because, like you said, the supplementals, most of them have very similar questions. And so, of course, we want to kind of take the easy route where, okay, well, they talk about how am I going to help the underserved, and then this other supplemental for this other school has pretty much the same question. I'm going to take out that school's name and insert the new school's name and send it off. But you really have to do your research and focus on what that particular school is interested in, because you might have something about the other school and you forgot, and then you just screwed yourself over. And you want to show that you've really researched the school, because they know people are applying everywhere, and they don't want to be just that blanket school that you apply to. They want to make sure you're 100% committed, because they want to make sure that when you're their program, you're going to put in all your effort and not just be sitting back like, oh, I'm here because it's the only place I got into.
And definitely, I think for the personal statement too, some people tend to do that. They kind of filter it towards or cater it towards the school that they want to go to, instead of making like a broad statement. You want to keep it relatively broad in the personal statement so that other schools don't notice like, oh, well, that's not kind of what we want, So you want to make sure that's broad, and then you focus in on each supplemental.
I agree. People put in their personal statement, I want to help the community I grew up in, and that almost sets you up for failure, because they're going to look and say, well, why are you going to come across country to a PA program if your goal is to go back home and help? Granted, you can do it, but it's a lot easier if you're going to a PA school right next to your hometown. So like you said, start broad for personal statement, narrow in on the supplementals, and then on the interviews, that's really when you get to kind of hone everything in. So it's interview time. Scary, nerve-wracking, anxious. I'm sure all these emotions are going through your head. How many places did you get to interview?
Let's see, my 2 years ago, I only had one. It was USC. I got waitlisted, and then I was ultimately rejected. Last year, I had USC again for a second time. Then I had Duke, and then I had Texas Tech, which I ended up declining.
Okay. So you had kind of a lot riding on those 2 interviews.
Right.
And let's kind of talk about the interview process, not necessarily the specifics, but just maybe some things that you remember, like things you did to help calm your nerves, or things you did that you felt helped improve upon your answers.
So definitely one thing I did was I went in thinking, hey, these people that I'm interviewing with, they're not my competition. These are my future classmates. So I went in there thinking, okay, well, I'm going to try to make as many friends as I can, because chances are if I get in, some of these people are going to be in my class again, and I'm already starting on the right foot. I got friends in the program already, and then we have something to connect on again.
I think that's an excellent point that you bring up. One thing that tends to happen in interviews is that everyone's kind of huddled in a room, or everyone's kind of in a room initially, and then they're talking to each other and kind of breaking the ice, and then ends up getting into like this competition. It seems like most places, everyone just ends up being in this competition saying, oh, I've interviewed at 5 places already, and I've already got accepted here. It's like, well, if you already got accepted, why are you here? Or it's like
you're sizing each other up at this point,
And then that, for me personally, like playing those head games just mess with me. And so it takes you out of your space, and then it catches you off edge, and then it makes it really tough. So I think the fact that you went in knowing like, hey, these are my future colleagues, and just be friendly, cordial, and we'll get through this together. I think that's an awesome way to go about it.
I definitely think not asking how many interviews they have or what schools and stuff like that was definitely beneficial, because I'd hear that they had 10 interviews, and I was like, I haven't had 10 interviews in 6 years, and it's more of a, it's more nerve-wracking for me than it is for me, just to be like, oh, okay, well, where are you from? What's your background like and stuff like that. It's a lot better than, trying to compete one-up each other.
Right. You're more in a relaxed state when you figure out, like, hey, we have something in common.
Right.
This is really
right,
cool.
Definitely.
So tell me a little bit about, like, interview, like, situations or things that caught you off guard. Just, was there anything, looking back now, that you wish you could have improved upon if you had to do it again?
Man, definitely my answer for my GPA. That was one, because I knew I addressed it in my personal statement. I addressed it in my secondary applications. But then in my Duke interview, the very first question that came out was, tell me about your UCLA GPA. And that stumped me right off the bat. I was like, well, that's not what I was expecting. I figured it'll be an opener, and then they'll get to that. But yeah, that one was a little difficult, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel that the interview process, you were kind of learning more about the program, and it helped you solidify, like, yes, this is definitely a program I want to attend?
Definitely. If they give you an opportunity to ask them questions, you get to ask a lot of questions, find out what their rotation schedule is like, what their didactic schedule is like. And at USC and Duke especially, they had students come in to talk to you. So you got to find out, like, a first person or view of what's actually really going on, or like a perspective of what's really going on, instead of the faculty kind of, fluffing up their story, making it sound like it's the most appealing program in the world, and then you actually get like a real,
So you got a chance to interact with students, which I think is very important, because you want to kind of, like you said, you want to learn the real aspect of student life. And some of the questions I always want to learn about when you're asking current students is, like, where do you like to study? What's a good, like, restaurant?
Right.
Some of those lifestyle kind of things.
Right, definitely. What do you like to do when you're not studying? I mean, you want to make sure that you're going to an area where there's something to do to unwind. You don't want to be stuck in the middle of nowhere where literally all there is school and maybe like a grocery store, because if you're going to the grocery store and school all the time, then there's nowhere to unwind, and you have to unwind during PA school. There's absolutely no way you could go through the whole entire time and not have, a day or two here and there where you get to just completely not worry about school.
Exactly. So then tell me about when you found out you got accepted into a PA program.
Oh man, that was I don't know, probably one of the best moments of my life.
Oh, I bet.
Probably second to hearing that my nephew was born, but
Wonderful. But for you too, it's just a testament. You work so hard, you put in all these hours, all these years of applying, and then finally you find out. How did you find out? Did they call you? Did they email you?
They called me. I was walking, right, I remember, I was walking from the parking lot across, going into the ER for work. It was 6:55, and she was like, hey, so we're trying to fill our class, because apparently last minute someone dropped out. And she was like, we're trying to fill your class. Would you like to attend? I was like, yes, absolutely, right away.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't even get to finish her sentence. I was like, I'm going to be there. She's like, do you even know what school is calling? I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. I'll be there.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, you interviewed at 2, so you know
right.
it was one
so
of the
one or the other, right?
But,
right.
No, that's awesome. That feeling, that excitement, all that hard work is finally paid off.
Right.
It's just so amazing. And now let's jump in a little bit to school. You're kind of getting used to the routine and everything. Yeah. Well, what are some of the things you like to do when you have some downtime? Even though you probably have no downtime from school. But
it's few and far in between. But as a class, we have amateur hour basketball. So we just try to get as many kids as we can out there, play a little pickup basketball. That's definitely helpful. We have Saturday mornings. We try to play a little soccer outside. So we have that. I mean, everyone's welcome. It's just for me, I love playing sports. I've been an athlete my whole entire life. Obviously, I don't look like an athlete now, but back in the day, I was. I try to, have fun. That's my unwind. Sports has always been a way for me to unwind. So whether it's going to a basketball game, whether it's watching a basketball game, even if it's not something physically active for me, it's the fact that I'm getting out of the house, getting out of school, going to a bar and watching a game, whatever it is. So.
Now, do you guys get discounted tickets to Duke basketball?
They're really cheap. They're like, I think that it's like a student package is only like $300, and face value for the UNC ticket or the selling value is like $2,000-$3,000. So it's a great deal. Definitely.
Nice. And then talk a little bit about being SoCal guy living in North Carolina.
Oh man, don't get me started on that. That's probably the hardest thing right now. Is forget about the school. The school is, I mean, if I put in the work, I know I can do it. The hardest part is the complete culture change. I mean, you're going from sunny California, 60, 70 degrees. When we call it cold, it's like 59 degrees. Cold over there is like it's in the 20s.
Wow.
It's snowing, it's icy. So
have you had to shovel snow? from
luckily,
your doorstep or
so
anything?
going in, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna find an apartment that's literally walking distance to school, because I knew my car wasn't conducive for driving in the snow. So I was like, okay, well, in case it does snow or if in case it does ice over, I can walk to class. So I make sure my building or my apartment's only 2-3 minutes away, and then so I can walk to class if I need to, or most of the time I drive because it's cold. But
Okay.
So no, I haven't had to shovel any snow yet.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, my friend, you've had such an amazing road, an amazing story, and I truly am thankful to get you out here to learn about it. Keep working hard. You're going to be amazing, PA.
Thank you. No, I love what you do. You're amazing. You're a role model for a lot of us out there.